Good evening, this is Davey T from Field Sports Scotland and another episode of FSS Chatback here on my YouTube and my Spotify and all my various other things. On this channel, every week on my podcast, I do try and cover the latest news and whatever's happening in the stalking industry and tell you a little bit what I've been up to this week. And wow, what a week for news in regards to deer stalking in Scotland and generally legislation in Scotland. So I'm trying to bring you a mixture of stuff so it's not all political. I hate it all being political, so I'm not a very political person myself. But it's just been mind-blowing. It's been a crazy time. Anyway, first things first, what have I been up to this weekend? Our lambing started. A number of farms have started lambing, so I've been out doing pest control, making sure, but I don't have a lot to do because I've did a lot in the past and I do this all year round. So when it comes to lambing, I don't really need to stress out too much and be out every night looking over the lambs. Mainly communication with the farmers, and I haven't lost a lamb to a fox in a number of years now. So I'm pretty easy when it comes to things. I do a few foxes, and I have shot a fox in recently on one of the farms, but I'm not doing a heck of a lot right now, which is great. I am concentrating on some rabbits and doing a little bit of that and some pigeons in sheds and things, but I'm also working on my constant deer plan because I'm having to do quite a lot in regards to tree management, and I have done this in one of our big projects that I'm involved in. I was up while I was up in that property, I had to shoot some deer that were on some fresh replant. So it's been a busy old week, but it hasn't just been a busy week for me. It's been a busy week in the deer stalking industry in general. It has been a nightmare. They've even had to bring in a mediation group. The Scottish government has to bring in a mediation group to mediate between sporting estates and rewilding estates. Wow, these are experts in conflict management in the Middle East and conflict management when it comes to the Ukraine, and they're bringing them in to mediate between rewilding estates and the Scottish government and the sporting estates because of the new red deer regulations or legislation is the word I'm looking for. I'm like, this is crazy. This is crazy times. This just shows you how important deer management is for Scotland. Now tonight, I hadn't planned to talk about this. Hadn't planned to talk about any of this tonight. I was actually going to talk about Lyme's disease and ticks, and I will be talking about Lyme's disease and ticks tonight because that's another important factor for anybody who works on the outdoor. Everybody out here who works in the outdoors comes across bugs. And in the stalking industry, we come across a lot more bugs than what most people do. But ticks is a big thing. But first of all, I wanted to get the part over with in regards to this mediation. Why do we need this mediation? Well, it's because for a long time, and I mean a couple of 100 years, deer stalking has been a huge part of a community. Gamekeeping and sporting in regards to grouse and pheasants and everything, the whole country sports side of things has been a huge part of the community. In fact, a lot of the villages, including the village I live in and the villages just up from where I'm from, the main employer in the area was the sporting estate. You had your stalkers, and along with your stalkers, you had housekeepers, you had gardeners, you had all sorts of things, even bakers. And back in the Victorian times, a whole estate would be self-managed. It would have their own people. They would have to do the basic jobs, like their own bakers, their own butchers, their own candlestick makers, their own, they were very self-sufficient, put it that way. Gardeners, gamekeepers, housekeepers, butlers, full management teams within their hospitality side of things, and even later, even as late as the 80s and early 90s, they still kind of dominated the Highlands, in regards to near enough every second person probably works or has worked for an estate. Joiners, handymen got most of their business from painter and decorators, got most of them estates. And hospitality is a massive thing in Scotland. It was a huge thing. It's only in the last 20, 30 years where it's moved away from the sporting side of things into the more ecological side of things, where you have ecotourism. People want to come to the Highlands and see the beautiful sights and the eagles and stuff. And I'm talking about the actual eagles and stuff. I saw a golden eagle the other day there. In fact, the property that we do, one of the big projects that I work on, a lot of the deer stuff, all the leftover bits after lardering and gralloching and stuff, are kind of left for the birds of prey. We've got nesting ospreys in two of the woods that I work on. We've got golden eagles that nest not far away from one of the woods that I work on, and they feed regularly. And in the springtime, when the whitetails come in, and the whitetail eagles or sea eagles or whatever, there's many different names to them, flying wardrobes, they come in. Now, that is sporting. That's predominantly when the deer side of things is. There's deer management on that property. There's recreational deer stalking on that property, and there is ecology on that property. Peatland restoration on that property. There is a whole heap of things all working together, and there's no reason why estates can't be like that. And that should be the model that that happens. However, on the rewilding side, there's a different goal from the sporting side. Because the rewilding side is predominantly not making that much money, they want to do nature capitalism, like we explained a couple of weeks back, making money from biodiversity credits or carbon capture credits or various other parts. There's no real model for that right now. And then you've got the sporting side of things, where their main money is sporting tourism. And there is an in-between. There is a bit in between. Because forestry have been working on that in-between for many, many years. They haven't really bothered about the pest control side of things in regards to foxes or birds of prey and things like that. And it's become safe haven for the likes of eagles and ospreys and various other types of birds of prey, peregrines and harriers and whatever. Some of those birds of prey do not really like forestry as such, but that when you open a forest up, it does attract them in. And the deer management side of things offer free feeding as well in regards to discarding of the grallochs or even legs and heads in some areas and that, instead of burying it. Now, the reason why, see, that's another thing that kind of a lot of people don't understand is that us throwing stuff into the wood isn't necessarily bad for the environment. It's not bad for the environment. It might be bad for you to see, but it's not bad for the environment, because there's lots of things that feed on that, from insect life, plant life, composting, self-composting, up to birds of prey and other mediocre predators. We don't have any real apex predators in Scotland, but we do have a lot of species that rely on carrion. Now, the problem with that is the neighbours of sporting estates traditionally didn't like that fact. So I've always been kind of in the middle. And the rewilding side, well, yeah, they kind of like that side of things, but they don't want to see the mess that having heads and legs, and if they come across, it's not very pleasant. And they're even on that side of things, they can't agree. They agree on, but they can't really agree on. You know, there's different reasoning. So this mediation thing for us guys in the middle who have been working forestry and been working tree protection for many years, or they've been working in places like the increased culls, it's not going to change to us, because it's not really going to increase our culls, because we're already doing the best that we can on getting the numbers down in the properties that we manage. And then, so the sporting estates are hating the idea of increased culls and longer seasons and no stag season, that sort of stuff. And on the rewilding side, they're happy with the increased culls and stuff like that, but they have their own little thing that they want to, they do. They kind of want to push. And there is this word that gets thrown around a lot. They're not radical enough. They need to be more radicals before they can get funding and stuff like that. And the two sides are clashing. And the guys like myself who are in the middle are just looking and going, what the heck is going on? So, big news. Other big news in regards to the new legislations that are coming. Snaring foxes is now illegal. No license needed. No license or anything. You can't apply for a license. It's snaring foxes. Full stop. No legal. It's never legal. There's lots of aspects that of management tactics that were used by sporting estates over the years, trapping for mink, stoats and weasels and stuff like that, and snaring foxes and various other things. Now they're increased legislation over raptor persecution as well, and so it's like all out war at the minute on sporting estates. So we've got to keep our heads to the ground, because I knew this is kind of coming. Everybody was saying to me, no, it's not good. There's too much clout. They've got too much clout. The sporting estates have got a lot of money. There are huge amounts of land ownership and stuff like that. No, that's not how it's working. It's becoming very, very volatile, actually. It's going to be a big fight. There's going to be a big fight. And I as I said, wrote an article about this about 10 years ago. I've got a similar article about sporting estates on my website on fieldsportscotland.com. And honestly, I'm right. This is becoming a big thing. It's huge. Anyway, I'm going to take a breath, because it is hard work keeping up with the daily stories as it's happening in regards to all this legislation that's coming in, and it's not going to stop. I knew as soon as the seasons were removed full on that this was going to be a domino effect on a heck of a lot of things. And the deer management nature restorations orders, 3 episodes ago that I explained, and I'd been talking about it since the consultation. Then last week, Scottish Gamekeeper Association came out and said they don't want to get involved in the consultation for deer management nature restoration orders and the increased seasons. And now there's a whole heap of articles about culling hinds out of season or heavily pregnant hinds. There is an argument to that, and I agree with the Scottish Gamekeepers Association. I stopped culling my hinds at the end of February, unless it's specific reasoning for it. I mean, if they're doing a heck of a lot of damage, got no choice. We have that extra license till the 31st of March, but I try not to use it. I try to do more scare tactics, pushing animals off, or if there is stags there, use that out of season license for stags instead of hinds, and knock over the male deer that's there and push the rest off the clear fells. That's what my tactic is. Fences don't always work. Fences, in my experience, don't stop anything from coming in. What it does is it stops things that are in from going back out, and that becomes very, very difficult. So, and it's expensive right now. It really is expensive. I'm looking at the time, and I know I'm going on about this, but it's like, it's changing almost on a daily basis. This is getting crazy. It really is. And do you know what? You guys, a lot of you guys, even in the guys who recreational stock, the stalking show's coming up in a week or so's time. And I always want to speak about something about that. But even you guys out there are not really seeing what is actually going on. You're only seeing one side of the story. You're not seeing both sides of the story. And I guess maybe this is why we do need this mediation and these specialists in mediation on conflict management, because there's got to be a middle ground. There's got to be somebody out there who turns around and says, come on, guys, let's chill out. Let's try and work this out and get what is good for everybody out of this. Because genuinely, I see some of the estate's points in this, right? Because there's a lot of land out there, a huge amount of land that you can't build on. It's got no good for farming, and it's only good for peatland restoration, or deer management. And the problem lies with deer management is that it's almost like grazing ground and damaging peatland. And this is a problem. It's like we're trying to do all this at once at the exact same time, and we're in such a rush to do it. Well, I'll tell you one thing. Scientists are not in a rush to do anything. I have never met a scientist that has ever been in a rush. COVID proved this. They were in a rush to get out vaccines, so they were trying literally everything. And I tell you one thing, I've never seen scientists so stressed, because they're not used to having this time limit and this budgets to work on, these small budgets to work on. So let nature take its time, and let's try and work all this out, because you're not fixing any of these problems overnight. I'm going to take a breath and have a drink. So, lots of things happening in conservation, we'll call it, in Scotland. Lots of things. And it's changing daily. I'm feeling like I'm going to have to do a nightly podcast to keep up. And I'm not going to do a nightly podcast, trust me. Now, what I really wanted to talk to you about tonight, and I'm coming on to that subject, is insect management in the summer. Whether you're an outdoor person walking the hills, whether you're a gardener, whether you're a deer stalker, whether you are beating grouse after the glorious 12th, or you are just rambling and taking your dog for a walk, you need to think about insect management. With these warmer weathers, with the wetter summers and periods of high insect productivity, you really need to start thinking about it. And one of our biggest problems in this country is Lyme's disease. Now, the fact of the matter is ticks, and that's where most likely you're going to get Lyme's disease. 5% of all ticks hold the Borrelia. I think it's Borrelia. I'm trying to remember what the word is. Borrelia. Borrelia. Anyway, Borrelia disease in them. So that's 5% of ticks. So you have a 5% chance of every time you get a tick that you will get Lyme's disease. Now the problem is Lyme's disease has increased in there's around about 40 cases a year now. Back in the late 90s and early 2000s, we were talking there was only maybe 20 cases a year, where it's almost doubled. And if you actually look at some of the literature when it comes to Lyme's disease, some of the doctors who are doing the research on this reckon if there's only 40 cases this year, 10 times that amount, because misdiagnosis by doctors. If you don't live in a pro-Lyme's area where there's a lot of Lyme's disease, doctors will, all the symptoms are very similar to various aches and pains and flu-like symptoms and shortage of breath, and there's many other different kinds of symptoms and many other different diseases that have the exact same symptoms as Lyme's disease. Unless you know you've had a tick and you've felt poorly after the tick. And then we always talk about these targets. You get a target and you could have Lyme's disease if you get the target. That's not guaranteed. You might not get Lyme's disease if you've got the target. But likewise, if you've not got the target and you've had a tick, you might still get Lyme's disease. There's quite, like every other disease, there's plenty of people out there who show no symptoms of having Lyme's disease, and then later on they get lots of muscle ache and whatever. Now, I spoke to a gamekeeper a few years back, and I agree with him that they reckon that anybody who's spent enough time outdoors, like gamekeepers, farmers, and anybody else who work in the countryside, gardeners, they reckon that every one of them's got a bit of Lyme's in them, because the fact is, if you've had a tick, there's a high chance that you've got Lyme's disease in some way or form. Now, I'm ginger. I don't really get bugged with that many beasties. I get the odd tick that doesn't really take. I usually can flick them off. But the biggest problem is, and this is where my advice, because I'm not a doctor, I'm not going to turn around and talk to you about all this statistics in regards to the chances of getting Lyme's and how to detect Lyme's and stuff like that. No, the only person who really can detect whether you've got Lyme's is your doctor. Go and get blood tests, and they'll be able to tell you if you've got Lyme's or not. You do get tick cards that take them, and it's all about how you take them off. But even if you take them off right, you can still get Lyme's disease. Borrelia in that tick will still transfer into your bloodstream and cause Lyme's. Now, there's cultures, there's countries out there who totally ignore the existence of Lyme's disease because they don't really want to put that much money into researching it. Australia's got a really bad problem with Lyme's disease and they just won't admit it exists. So, and I'm not having a go at the Aussies. You might think I'm having a go at the Aussies. I'm not. It's just, there is countries out there that just kind of do not spend the time on this. So, how do I protect myself from ticks and that out there? Well, there's very limited what you can do. There is Shooter King, for instance, and I'm not plugging in because I'm not I don't get anything. I've got no affiliates in this channel. Nobody gives me any money yet. I don't even have any advertisements, as you notice. And I fund all of this myself. But Shooter King do like their insect, mosquito repellent, tick repellent shirts and trousers and stuff like that. And you do get a few companies that do it. And most of that stuff is hugely expensive. One of the biggest things that I always find, because we're not just talking about ticks, we've got midges, we've got various amounts of different flies, horse flies, blue bottles, hundreds of flies. We could go through a whole list of what we could be bugged with while you're out and about. My best thing that I've ever purchased is a £21, and there's various brands of these, midge jacket. It is a full-on jacket that you stick over the whole body, and it's got a hood and there's a couple of zips, and it closes your whole body, your upper body, from your wrists upwards, from your waist upwards. It completely covers you with a fly net, and it's got a zip so you can take the hood down and stuff like that. It is fantastic. It's a pain in the backside, don't get me wrong, in the warmer weather, because it's unbelievably warm in there. I wear glasses, but I wear contacts when I'm stalking or when I'm out and about. And again, I steam up and I sweat like mad and various other things happen. But I know how important it is, because there's nothing worse than having your day spoiled because you're covered in flies, covered in various others. And when I deal with deer, when I'm dealing with red deer, at any time of year, I do have the possibility of getting ticks off them. I will always get kids off them. It's not when I'm wearing the midge jacket, but usually if I'm not wearing the midge jacket. There's various other flies that come off of those things. They are smelly. I mean smelly. And for those uninitiated, kids are deer lice. They can bite you, but they don't do any harm to you. Most of the flies that a deer gets on them or an animal gets on them are just annoyance and nuisance and embarrassing if you get them on you. Ticks is the one thing that you really do need to watch for. I've heard of botfly larvae being inside people's skin and stuff like that, and botfly being found in people's ears and stuff like that. Yep, but genuinely don't do you any harm. It's disgusting, but I've never actually witnessed it myself, and I've got to say it's got to be pretty rare. However, ticks is one thing that everybody's guaranteed to get on them. I've literally growled a deer, and after I've growled the deer, looked at my hand, and my whole hand's been crawling on them, and I've wiped them off. Now, luckily, I don't know whether I've got thick skin or whether it's just because I'm ginger. I don't seem to ever get ticks, so I don't have a problem with them, but you need to check yourself. If you've come across a tick, and I'm going to be honest here, if you've come across a tick that is got a body on it, it's a proper bean, then your hygiene isn't as good as what you think it is. I am kidding you not. You haven't checked yourself. And I mean, if you're out and about and you got to check yourself, you need to find somebody to check you. Now, it's good if you've got a wife or a girlfriend, or if you're a girl and who's stalking. We've got a lot of female stalkers and they're amazing stalkers. If you've got a partner, is probably the better, or your mother or your father or whatever. If you've got somebody to check you over, that is the best eyes you can get, because waiting for it to feel that weird itch or that annoying kind of rash that's coming up, and then noticing that you've got a bean tick, the tick is formed a bean on you, that means it's been there for a while. It doesn't happen just overnight. It happens, takes a few days. And I mean, sometimes it could take a week for them to get that bean. They don't have that bean when they land on you. They only have that bean on them after they have drawn a significant amount of fluids from your body. So they don't do that overnight, because when they get to a certain size, they fall off. Now, when it gets to that bean size and you've got that tick on you, I'm starting to worry. I am genuinely starting to worry how long that's been there. Now, so your own personal hygiene, look over yourself. Don't care how embarrassing it is. It is the most important thing you could do after every day out. Now, I know gardeners in this area. Now, the Scottish Government do put a map online of where the most likely places to get Lyme's disease, where the Lyme's disease hotspots are. If you live in those hotspots and you get a tick, get yourself checked, because that's important, you know, because it could affect your life. If you catch it quick, you might relieve some of the symptoms. I don't think there's a cure for Lyme's disease at the moment. I haven't found out there is a cure for Lyme's disease. Various antibiotics and stuff like that deal with the symptoms, and sometimes that's just as good, you know. But there is extreme cases where blindness and various other things have come in about it. So one of those £21, 20 quid midgy jackets from Amazon or other outlets, get one of them. Make sure you've got one on you when you're out and about. It won't spoil your day, especially if you're walking in the woods. Having that on you, you can pretty much walk through swarms and you won't be affected by it, especially if you're in an area where there's high midges. With the moisture that we're having at the moment, with the moisture that's going to be happening, the humidity that we are creating because of the climate changing to a little bit warmer weather and stuff, I've had midgy swarms right out to late November in the Highlands here. We've had refresh hotspots in November and even in January where there's been hatches of flies and stuff like that. So don't think because it's winter time you might not need these things. Sometimes you will. Sometimes you will. I don't know what else to say about it. Just protect yourself and check yourself over, because that's the most important thing. Now, I'm going to call it a night for that, because I had an emotional start, because genuinely everything's changing day on day in regards to sporting. It's not just a conversation about consultations now. This is like proper mediation. There's a war going on right now, an absolute war, and it's actually stressing me out a little, because I was thinking, this is the 2nd of April. Yesterday would have been the first day of the Roebucks. Now, traditionally, the first day of the Roebucks, you would see hundreds of guys on all over the social media going, "Oh, I'm going off for my first buck of the year tomorrow," and stuff like that. There's no excitement. I said this a couple of weeks ago. There's no excitement. There's a weird kind of air. People are being more enclosed than ever. You got the rewelding companies trying not to shake things up at their side, and you've got the sporting side trying not to shake things up at their side. And then you've got the guys in the middle that are like, well, where do we stand? What do we do? And I mean, it's a really confusing time if you're in the industry. It really is. It'll work out. It'll work out. I know it will. Protect yourself when you're out there. Not just with bugs and flies and stuff like that. Just make sure that you're all right. Make sure you are keeping yourself on a level keel. Because, tell you one thing, you need to enjoy your outdoor life. Your sport, if you're a shooter, your sport. If you're a rambler, enjoy that. If you're a gardener, enjoy that. You need to enjoy and be safe doing it. And just know that you're part of something massive. Anyway, I'm going to say goodnight. It's been half an hour now. And thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting my channel. And happy hunting. I'll see you soon.